can't necessarily put my finger on it fully, but I do feel like, that the part that Paperboy went through was definitely somehow a shout out or a tribute to MF Doom. For those who are unfamiliar with MF Doom, he passed away a few years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but his death was announced, like, I want to say either New Year's Eve or like the day before New Year's Eve. Although, MF Doom was dead, I think maybe weeks prior to the announcement. Hey, what's going on, folks? Another episode of Just My Opinion with Ryan. I'm yours truly, Ryan. Truly grateful for anyone who's tuning in. You see the pop-up, that would do me a huge favor as well. It's bittersweet, folks. I'm sure, as you know by now, the final season of Atlanta has dropped. The 2-episode premiere came on last night. And yeah, man, it's kind of bittersweet. I wasn't the biggest fan of season 3. Season 3 had its moments, but I don't think it was the strongest in comparison to the other seasons. But, this is going to be just like a review, more so, not necessarily a recap. So I'm not definitely not going to go through like a play-by-play of each scene and so forth. So yeah, with that said, there's going to be spoilers. If you're here, I'm assuming you already saw the episode. And let's just have a discussion about it. Please feel free to leave a comment. And, as we all know, Atlanta has never been one to shy away from race and so forth. And I do think there's a good similarity between the first 2 episodes in terms of the white women who were highlighted. First woman, of course, also a known fact. Atlanta has been known to, reenact certain viral moments, and they definitely reenacted the viral moment when it came to the riot that's happening in what looks to be like a Target or some type of a department store of some sort. Either way, of course it would be who else but Darius who will try to entertain the idea of returning an item during a riot or during an event where people are just looting through the store. But of course I found it, funny, the whole comparison. You got this white lady in the cart who's playing security when there's literally no official security around at the moment, but she has it in her heart to just play security. But anyway, I'm not to digress too much. I like the comparison between the wheelchair lady or the lady in the cart and Lisa Dahl, I believe her name was, the former TSA agent. And the comparison is this: like, some people will just go above and beyond about certain stuff where it's either not their business, hence the woman in the cart, or it was just a situation where it's not that big of a deal. Of course, clearly for episode 1, this woman is in a wheelchair, but yet is willing to stab people and willing to play security from a store that's rioting. Just like the real life situation, Target is literally $1 billion company. I'm sure they managed after that riot. I'm sure that wasn't that huge of a hit. But even with that being said, she felt it on her heart to just play some fake ass superhero because she saw a bunch of people looting. Of course, mainly being black people. And even with the second episode, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the second episode more because I really appreciated just a highlight on therapy. But during that, like maybe shortly after his breakthrough, he explains this hard time that this white woman gave him at the TSA, where he literally shows his passport and she turns him away because she feels like the passport just looks too used, which, I've never heard of that before. I have a passport. I've used it here and there. Granted, I haven't used it to the point to where someone has told me my passport looks too used. But to say it looks too used or too worn or whatever it was, and I'm gonna turn you away, yeah, that's pretty infuriating. Especially, the whole hassle it takes to even get to an airport. You gotta pack up, you gotta arrive at the gate, X amount of time early, unless you got, the TSA pre-check, whatever the case. Just the whole arriving and departure of an airport can be a big deal in itself. So for someone to turn you away for the most petty of reasons, that would get under my skin too. So I like that comparison of how, in this case, it can't be applied to everybody, but in this case, you got two white women who just went above and beyond for no reason, ultimately, and it can be, and for that reason, it could be very infuriating. One thing I also did appreciate about the first one, I can't necessarily put my finger on it fully, but I do feel like, that the part that Paperboy went through was definitely somehow a shout out or a tribute to MF Doom. For those who are unfamiliar with MF Doom, he passed away a few years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but his death was announced I want to say either New Year's Eve or the day before New Year's Eve. Although, MF Doom was dead, I think maybe weeks prior to the announcement. And just the way this character, Blue Blood, was rapping, it was very similar to the type of cadence and so forth that MF Doom does, and and sometimes I'm not the biggest MF Doom fan, but I'm definitely familiar with his work. Accordion is one of my favorite songs, but yeah, sometimes if you listen to MF Doom rap, sometimes some of the stuff that he is rapping about, it can sound random, and it's all right, that sounds cool, but so just the whole thing about how they pieced it together for the Blue Blood, how certain things sounded random, but it was kind of cool. It definitely sounds, when I think about it, it definitely sounds like it could have been a scavenger hunt when you listen to certain MF Doom songs as well. So I thought that was kind of dope. But yeah, that's the best I could put. I really do think that part was a tribute to MF Doom. And the part I could have done without was definitely the whole Atlantic Station. Maybe that might be like a inside Atlanta joke thing. But they're running into all these exes at this place, and sometimes the writers and Donald Glover can get too deep for me. Maybe there was some deeper meaning behind that. Metaphorically speaking, you might run into your ex and it literally feels like they're in the same place as you last saw them, maybe something to that degree. But nevertheless, man, them trying to leave and not being able to find their car, it reminded me of that Seinfeld episode when Seinfeld and his friends could not find their car in the mall parking garage. And I thought it was, kind of one thing I'm liking about the first two episodes is kind of like how stories are kind of, toward the end interconnecting with each other. Donald Glover, Earn and Van, they find that exit, and it's kind of scary, it's kind of dark, and they ended up falling into this empty Blue Blood funeral. I thought that was kind of clever how they brought that back. And same with the second episode. Most of that episode I think that's my favorite out of the two, as I mentioned, especially because of the whole therapy. Having a therapist is very healthy. I like that certain shows are highlighting that there's nothing wrong with getting help. Even if there's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing wrong with seeing a therapist on a fairly regular basis. But anyway, I liked how it was pretty much bouncing back and forth between Donald Glover's therapy session and this white woman. I believe her name is Lisa. I think her last name was Dahl or Dom. Let's just go with Lisa. But, I liked how that kind of circled around. Once he stopped going to therapy, he kind of just exacted revenge on this woman named Lisa, who we found out at the end is that TSA lady who gave Earn and his family a hard-ass time in the first place. So I thought that was kind of dope just to circle around that. So And of course, Atlanta's no stranger to having certain episodes, reconnect. Huge fan. I thought the first two episodes were great. I especially liked that second episode because of, once again, the whole therapy angle, highlighting the breakthrough that Ern and his therapist had with one another. And we also finally get the history of what happened with the whole, his whole issue of why he left Princeton. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, and that is enraging. And I'm sure some people, like I said, can be very familiar with that. And just to rewind a little bit, if you saw the recent video I did on Raising Canaan, there was a scene I talked about how Rock was like, yo, you got to leave white women alone. They'll fuck around and get you in trouble. And long story short, that's kind of how Ern's story went. He went through the whole thing about how he bought this nice suit for this interview he wanted to go to. He let this, his fellow RA friend who was white, who he grew fond of, hold his suit for whatever reason. And when he really needed a suit, she wasn't around to give it to him. She was kind of borderline ghosting him and stuff like that. And being that he had the master key, he went in and got his suit. Didn't steal anything. Literally got his suit. But it didn't matter. He was still vilified as if it was just like this black monster going into this innocent white girl's room and stealing stuff. Even though he didn't steal anything, literally just wanted to get his suit that he